Hey guys, it's Tyler back from a brief hiatus. Been not making videos for a number of other reasons, and I did have my first HEMA meeting of the college semester the other week, and totally forgot to record it. We had two new people show up, and then by the time I thought to record it, an hour and 45 minutes had passed, and we were basically done. I will try to remember doing that this Sunday and hopefully have a video on footwork for you. So, I wanted to respond to a comment I got about a month ago, and I don't have his name pulled up or anything right here for me. Sorry, this is all just off of memory. Shauna and I said something about not looking, into the book when you're in the middle of gameplay in a stream. Just offhand, that wasn't the topic. And somebody said basically that's a nice adage, except um, what if you're playing a very crunchy or complicated game and are you expected to just memorize everything in the book? No, no. I have a framework that I use for playing crunchy games. My most played game, if you're new to the channel or just haven't heard me talk about it somehow, is Pathfinder First Edition. The core rulebook for that game is like 600 pages long. It would be crazy of me to expect you to memorize all 600 pages of that game. And as a technical writer, I know that people aren't even going to read all 600 pages, top to bottom, the first read through, let alone memorize it. So, what I expect more is a framework whereby you remember the important bits. What are the important bits? Well, one, you need to know the game engine. What's the number one thing that your system uses to resolve tasks, to resolve opposition? In a d20 system, of course, that is you roll a d20, you add either your skill in the matter, your attribute if no skill is applicable, or perhaps some trait bonus, feat bonus, racial bonuses, what have you other than that. Now, in a d20 system, this can seem like a lot, except you can boil that down to the essence of you roll a d20, you add and subtract the malices and bonuses. So if there's a situation by which you don't remember if fatigued is a -2 to a certain physical skill or what have you, like running, or a -3 to that same stat, that can be something that can be very quickly rectified by having a cheat sheet open that says fatigue -2 to X, Y, and Z. And then you just look over, bam, you're done. And you don't have to go scanning through a 600-page book trying to go, let's see, index, fatigue, and then you're totally breaking the bit. What's supposed to be happening in the game is this guy's, sprinting. He's running away from this demon that's, trying to kill him. And you're going, oh, what's going on? And it just kills the pacing, right? And reminds everybody, hey, we're playing a game, ding, ding, ding. Obviously, you know that, right? But the more it's shoved in your face, the sort of worse it gets. It's sort of like, when you're playing a Bethesda game and you have to open the console to fix an issue because you've gotten stuck or something. Yeah, ultimately, you're playing Skyrim, which is a video game. But when you open the console to, TCL through a wall, it just feels that much lamer, right? It's like, man, I just want to be able to have a smooth, straightforward experience. I don't want to have to keep dealing with this to progress the game. So that's what this whole video is based on. Again, you may have other systems, and this isn't really about the particular system that you're using, be it a d20, percentile, d6, pool, the one roll engine, something weird, a diceless, a card based system, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Figure out what that base system is, and then when you're unsure and you don't have that cheat sheet to hand, you at least know, well, the formula for figuring out how I resolve a task is the die roll plus or minus modifiers. I compare that number to either an opposition or a fixed number. You should also know, if you're running the game, pretty much what numbers are what difficulty, right? If I don't know exactly what slick cobblestone, for example, is to climb up in Pathfinder. I don't know. I think that may be a DC 15, but I know a DC 15 is like a moderate difficulty challenge. So I don't need to be able to compare that exactly to it, right? That's just a helpful guideline more than anything, not something you're supposed to memorize necessarily. Maybe this cobblestone's slightly slicker than the one that's used in the book as an example, so it's a DC 16 instead. Just like in Shadowrun, I wouldn't necessarily spend the huge amount of time to construct a custom character with all of his cybernetics and all this different stuff if they're just gonna die in a single headshot from a sniper rifle anyways, most likely. I would go, this guy's got some cybernetics, so he's probably going to be more agile than your average person, but be more likely to show up, and I'll just move the numbers up and down accordingly. If he ends up living and becomes a recurring character for whatever reason, then that's part of the emergent gameplay. Then I will make a character sheet for him and actually flesh him out, round him off, and keep all of these things more kosher. The important thing is that you aren't moving these numbers once you've established them. So if you've established it as a moderate DC, a DC 15, that stays a DC 15. If a player character then breaks their hand or something, tries to climb that same DC 15 wall, that wall doesn't suddenly become a DC 17. It's a -2 to their ability to climb walls, if that makes sense. The tricky part comes with subsystems. Subsystems throw a monkey wrench in here because they often do not use the core mechanic, the engine of the game. And lots of games will use this as a selling point to sell you, oh, we're not just another D20 system, we have this cool subsystem that differentiates us. You have a few options here. You can likewise shove that second bit of knowledge in your head and understand how the subsystem works, such as magic. Magic is a famous subsystem of D20 systems, Vancian casting. You have prepared spells, and they work in such and such a way. I have two solutions for this. One, only learn and memorize these subsystems if you're actually going to interact with them. I could not tell you a ton about the mass combat subsystem for Pathfinder 1st Edition, other than that it sucks and I don't use it. That's another rule. Cut subsystems you don't like, also. When I have a player that wants to use the magic subsystem, I request that they understand how magic works. You as a GM should also know how magic works, especially because you're probably going to have an NPC that needs to use magic or something like that. But if it's something even more esoteric, then I don't know, maybe you have some occult system in the game that deals with the spirits of the dead, and you don't even think you're going to have an NPC. It's going to be like one player character specific thing. Just trust your players to understand how their character works. This isn't something that's going to work if you are playing with a group of brand new people or with total randoms, because that trust just won't be built up yet. And this is part of why I like playing campaigns. Yes, you can vet your players and you can get a sense of trust before you've ever played with them, but you will really know, I trust this player to play a weird character whose mechanics I don't really understand, and I trust that they're not trying to win the game, they're not trying to cheat me here. That is legitimately how the rules work. Okay, fair enough. And if it ends up creating balance issues, we can talk about that after the game. Figure out, is that actually how this works? Is this not how this works? Is it how it works and it's not balanced, so it's not balanced in a way that's uninteresting or unfun or what have you, such as, the default summoner class in Pathfinder 1st Edition. That class is just not very fun to play because it is unbalanced such that you get to play both a caster and effectively have a fighter, and then the fighter in the party is like, well, what the hell am I here for? And the narrative answer is they're there to roleplay, of course. Not every character needs to be as powerful as the next character, especially in a fight necessarily, but that's sort of a different topic, right? I'm talking about the specific systems in the game right now. And classes can be thought of as a subsystem almost, at least when they have resources to manage. So allow your players to understand those subsystems if you are not going to interact with those subsystems at all. Likewise, allow your players to not understand certain subsystems if they're not going to interact with them at all. They don't need to know how the big complicated grapple flow chart in Pathfinder works if they're not a grappler. Because all you need to know if you're defending a grapple is roll Escape Artist or roll your CMB. That's it. It's very simple when you're defending it, so you don't need to know the whole thing, have it memorized. And again, that's yet another thing you can have pulled up on a cheat sheet. What else? Sailing rules, right? Don't bother memorizing all of the rules for vessels accelerating at such and such a rate, and how many people need to be crewed for a galley and a long ship and a rowboat and whatnot. If you're playing a landlocked area, there's no reason to memorize those rules or even have them pulled up. And of course, it might be something that comes up. Maybe, just through the emergent gameplay, somebody ends up going to shore, grabbing a boat, all of this stuff. What do we do then? Well, refer back to step one, know the base mechanics of your game. You can solve this through skills. This is why most of us in the sort of 3D, 4D space really like skill based games, because at the end of the day, if you don't remember what the subsystem is, you can go back to the skills based part of the system and fix it through there, right? I don't know how fast this ship can go. Well, then we're just going to make it you have a good ship, you can get a +2 to your roll. They have a crappy ship, they're going to get a -2 to their roll. And then we adjudicate it based on who the better captain is, who's better at their ship captaining profession role, or their sailing role, or whatever your game has as an equivalent. That's not all I want to say, I don't think, but I'm trying to link it to another topic at this point. Subsystems should also generally reflect what the characters in the world are doing. If a subsystem makes you play a sort of mini game that has no bearing on what the actual characters are doing, that's kind of strange. That's going to pull you out, and it's going to be more difficult to remember that subsystem. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So my three steps for you are: know what your core mechanic, the engine, is doing. Allow your players to understand what their own characters can do. Trust that they know it and you won't have to memorize it. Cut away all the chaff. Cut away everything that is unnecessary. You're landlocked, just don't memorize the sailing thing. Don't clog up your cheat sheet with it. If it does happen to come up, again, you've got that core mechanic memorized, and then you can go back afterwards. The last thing I wanted to mention is, what of the event that you don't know the official rule and you're on the spot discussion, you're on the spot, using of the core mechanic, ends up killing a character, but the actual rules written in the book would have allowed that character to live? There's a sort of philosophical side of this, I guess, a game philosophy side, which says if the subsystem and the core mechanics are so different that you can get a totally different outcome as far as whether a character lives or dies, maybe there's something wrong with the way the system's written, or the subsystem is written, either or. Or you can look at it from a more practical perspective of, I say, look at how the situation happened, and we can either, and your social contract's going to play this, we can either go back and replay that scenario with the correct rules and just play it as if that happened, as if there was a glitch in the matrix, there was a twist of fate, something wrong happened. We can invent some flavor for that situation to be replayed. Don't overuse the bad dream thing. That's way overdone. But in high fantasy, in sci-fi, these things can work. Alternatively, you can have a penalty be placed, but not be fully dead. So uh, I'm thinking prodigal son, but that's not right. The man thought to be dead then returns, missing an arm, missing an eye, scarred up, beat to hell. Uh, you know, he lost that fight. That did happen. Everyone saw him die, but he didn't actually. Weird Frontiers has a rule called roll the body, which is when you die, you're not dead until somebody checks to see if you're dead or not. So somebody sees you, crash on a bunch of rocks in your ship, everyone ends up dead, and then you totally party wipe, and it's like, oh, well, that's the end of that. And you do your epilogue, whatever. Then you look into the rules and go, ooh, actually, you guys shouldn't have been dead. Now that's a jumping off point for either a short campaign or a second one shot, a second shot where you play as shipwrecks now because of your little mistake. This is sort of called the fail forward philosophy, but I think it's taken to a macro level here where fail forward the whole way. You didn't memorize this rule, well, you kept the pace going, and the pace was not at the cost of anything. Some people might be worried that this leads to people, oh, it feels like you're pulling your punches. Oh, no, you didn't actually die. Well, no, they only didn't actually die if the rules as written said you didn't actually die. If your ruling on the spot and the rules in the book would have both resulted in them being dead, then yeah, they're just dead, and that's just how it played out. So it's not really pulling your punches. It's more of an unreliable narration of sorts, right? You were appearing as though you died to a first glance, but on second observation, nope, you didn't actually die. It was just a really hairy, close shave. You managed to do something. I don't know. I'm not going to roleplay your character for you here. But yeah, that's like the worst case fringe scenario of you making up these rulings on the spot, right? And it's not really making up a ruling on the spot because that's such a lazy way of saying it. Oh, rulings, not rules. You make the ruling on the spot informed by everything around you, right? By the other things I mentioned. How is the game written, right? If it's a D20 system and all of a sudden you randomly ask a player, I don't know, roll a d4 to see which direction the ship goes, straight, left, right, or backwards, that's totally just, I might as well be fudging the dice. It's just a total bizarre hand wave. No, you're going to make a ruling on the spot informed by how the game you're using is written. So, yeah, I don't like this rulings not rules thing because it's just an empty platitude that is never backed up by things. Hopefully, this helps you. Let me know if this wasn't clear. It's my first video in a month or so, so I'm probably more rambly than usual. Getting some more decorations put up. I'll try to switch out my vinyls up here. I think I can fit 2 more in here. uh, Anyways, see ya. Let me know what vids you'd like to see in the future. Thanks for watching.